Welcome back, everyone. Just as Samsung's Galaxy S8 is getting ready to launch, we are starting to hear rumors that the newest iPhone, the iPhone 8, the iPhone X, whatever you want to call it, might be delayed. So joining us now to discuss is Fred McClimans, partner and head of research at Samadhi Partners and contributor at Seeking Alpha. Fred, tell us the latest in terms of what you're hearing here, and should investors be worried that this new iPhone could potentially be delayed?
If there's one thing that is a constant around Apple stock, it's rumors. There's always something boiling in the background here. And the latest is that there's a possibility that the iPhone 8 might be delayed a little bit, perhaps a month, maybe two, moving into supply channels later this year after what is expected to be the announcement coming up shortly here. For that. So, does that raise a red flag for people? It should. It should always be something that you're concerned about. The iPhone accounts for about 2/3, maybe a little bit more than 2/3 of Apple's revenue. And while it's not its highest margin product, that actually is its services business. Any delay in that revenue or in that refresh cycle on the part of consumers should cause concern for Apple.
Right. Well, and the concerns seem bigger than obviously a delay in Bixby, right? Because if you're buying the new Samsung Galaxy S8, you're not going to get Bixby, at least here in the U.S. right away. But again, it's not the entire product that is actually itself delayed. I mean, of those rumors out there, we haven't really seen it playing out in the stock at all yet. I mean, the stock is essentially flat from the same time a week ago when some of these rumors started swirling. But I mean, is there a way that you can quantify potentially how detrimental it could be maybe to shareholders if this is indeed delayed?
That's the million-dollar question, so to speak.
The billion-dollar question,
the billion. I mean, look at Apple's stock. Over the last 12 months, it has had a phenomenal run. There have been, naysayers, and I've certainly dinged Apple in a number of areas. And one of which is if you look at the new iPhone rumors about the product coming out, it does not look that different from a Samsung. I mean, it's almost a one-for-one par. These guys kind of pass each other on a weekly basis, not unlike Facebook and Snap here. But look at that delay. People are starting to question what really is Apple doing. Can they boost their margins, which they've also been boosting in their earnings a bit by buying back shares? But can they boost their margins through increasing the services business? People are asking, what type of impact do some of these moonshots into automated driving? Some of the research programs that we've talked about on here before about some of their glucose monitoring. Are those distractions? Are they innovating? This is really a critical time for Apple because over the last 6-12 months, they've benefited a lot from Samsung's shortcomings, to be honest.
Let's get to brass tacks here, as we like to do. Isn't the fundamental question about Apple that drives everything else in the company and the stock iPhone sales, global iPhone sales? That is a giant portion, 2/3 of their revenue, and it is at the core of the Apple franchise today. And so the question I have is, as Apple and Samsung begin converging in terms of hardware, what does it say? What does it mean in terms of Apple's differentiation, especially because Apple is a premium-priced product that likes to command that price premium in the market, and that, coupled with innovation on the cost side, and allows them to maintain and grow margins. Like, what is your view on that core issue for Apple and their ability to maintain that kind of sales growth in the iPhone segment over time?
You're spot on, in terms of the comparison between Apple and Samsung there. I will say that Apple, in the past, they have done a very good job of blending hardware and software. And I'm not necessarily talking about the applications that you can buy through the iTunes or the App Store. I'm really talking about the core iOS software itself. It just works very well. It's very secure. And that has been a differentiator for them in the past. That's changing a bit. Right now, I primarily see Apple's advantage over Samsung in terms of Tim Cook's operational prowess. From an operations perspective and from them starting to bring in some of their supply chain components so that they can control that process and get a little bit better margin and perhaps a little bit value add out of there, I think that's a great thing. But it also means that if the iPhone and the Samsung products look that alike, It's really going to come down to the ecosystem and the applications that really add the value on top of that. And that's where Apple, I think, has a relatively strong position, but we're still waiting to see what they do with the iWatch and how they can actually start to tie in some of their other software features into that phone.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Apple also recently has been making their software products available for free now to users. When you look at Keynote, which has obviously been a popular product, GarageBand, iMovie, some of the others, iPhoto, that appears to me to be a sign of weakness, i.e. they can no longer extract margin for those products from consumers, so they're bundling them with the hardware as a way to drive that stickiness. I wonder, as software becomes proliferates more and more in these areas, and with the Samsung or any Android phone for that matter, you can very seamlessly use best-of-breed software on your other mobile devices. How quickly before that gap closes, and what can Apple do to withstand that pressure?
But that's a really good gap that you're pointing out there, and it is an issue. Quite honestly, I mean, I've been a user of Keynote and GarageBand for years. Personally, I could never figure out how they could charge for that in the first place. I mean, they're good, but they're not great. But they were unique. Apple, one interesting aspect of what Apple has done, I mean, just look at the announcement yesterday, Apple and Facebook, where Apple is now going to be integrating Apple Music, as is Spotify, into Facebook's Messenger app, which looks increasingly like WhatsApp out there. I think this is an interesting point here, because Apple has never done well in the social space, and they've really relied upon others, to kind of lead that software value add moving forward. So it's going to be very, very tricky for Apple. I think they do need to find a way to offer a more seamless experience.
Interesting.
And, and I'm not sure that they have the ability to do that yet.
Lots to watch here with Apple. We know a number of investors will be watching very, very closely. Thanks, Fred McClimans, partner and head of research at Samadhi Partners and contributor at Seeking Alpha. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, guys.